Gutians and Sumerians. Much of the history as written today is nothing but falsehood when it comes to the people who lived in ancient Sumer. For example, here's a Sumerian. Instead of showing Sumerians in textbooks, scholars provide pictures of Gutians from Lagash. Without the concept of race, the lie being taught that Sumerians were non-blacks, Gutians, will exist forever. Since textbook publishers only publish what they want us to believe, you can continue to follow the Eurocentric propaganda that erases blacks from ancient history. I would rather stick to reality. The Gutians were southern whites. Here's a picture of the Gutians and the Sumerians. As you can see, the Gutians did not look like the Sumerians, who were black. To understand the whites, you have to realize that there are a number of white populations. The European whites can be divided into at least two groups, the northern and southern Europeans. The northern Europeans mated with black Europeans, but for the most part they were able to maintain a much lighter complexion. The southern Europeans were less numerous, so they retained a much darker complexion than the northern Europeans. Most of the southern whites would be the Syrians, the Turks, and the Indo-Aryan speakers. The ancestors of these whites are the Gutians. They are mountain people that originate in highlands of Central Asia and Mesopotamia. According to the historian Henry Holworth in 1901, they wrote that the Gutians were pale-skinned and blonde-haired. This identification of the Gutians as pale and fair-haired first came to light when Julius Opert published a set of tablets he had discovered, which described Gutians and Sabarian slaves as Namrum or Namrutum. Namrum means light-colored or fair-skinned. The racial character of the Gutians as blondes or being light-skinned was also taken up by George Vacher de la Ponge in 1899, and later by historian Sidney Smith in his early history of Assyria. Ephraim Avigon Spencer, however, criticized the translation of Namrum as light-colored. An article was published by Spencer in the Journal of American Oriental Society attacking this translation. But as you can see from these pictures of the Gutians, they were light-skinned. We read in one of the most important books on the Gutians that the Gutians, also called Gutians or Kuti, were a tribe that overran southern Mesopotamia when the Akkadian Empire collapsed in approximately 2183 BC. Sumerian sources portray the Gutians as a barbarous, ravenous people from Gutium or Quartium in the mountains, presumably the central Zagros. The Sumerian king list represents them as ruling over Sumer for a time and paints a picture of chaos within the Gutian administration. In fact, we find that much of what the Sumerians wrote about the Gutians was that their raids crippled the economy of Sumer. But the Gutians did have one successful empire, and this was the city of Lagash. And we find that in many of the textbooks, instead of putting actual pictures of Sumerians, they mainly just show pictures from Lagash, and by showing people from Lagash, it makes it appear as though the ancient Sumerians were white, when in reality the ancient Sumerians were Gutians. Here's we have two pictures of the Sumerians and the Gutians. Note the difference in handshake between the Gutian and the Sumerian. Okay, the Gutian hand clasps, the fingers are over the fist, as you can see. But in relation to the Sumerian hand clasp, fingers are under the fist. These pictures show how the Sumerians and Gutians wanted to make sure that they did not be mistaken for different populations. In summary, the Gutians were, in a sense, a barbarous people. The Gutians did, in a sense, rule the ancient city of Lagash, but that was the only city. The Sumerians said that the Gutians lacked human intelligence and had the canine instinct and monkey features. This is kind of racist, so I don't really think it's we should acknowledge it, but this is what the Sumerians thought about the Gutians. But most importantly, you'll find that no Gutian kings of Lagash are mentioned in the Sumerian king list. In other words, although the Gutians had or ruled the state of Lagash, they're not mentioned at all by the Sumerians in their list of kings.